Right, the story, thank you very much indeed for that story, and that music indeed, Sean, but thank you for the story earlier from Raquel on volunteering in our area. And indeed, I suppose volunteering all across the world, because wherever you are in the world, seek out the opportunities for volunteering and do it. Coming now to a story that is different in a way, but really not that different, because it's still a story of caring. One man's story of a quest for a mother he never knew. A man who, later in life, in his 40s now, I think it's true to say, a man who knew that he had lost a mother when he was a year and a half old, and he went to find out what happened to her and to discover her last resting place. I want to welcome Patrick Cahill, Newry man, with me in studio. Patrick, how are you?
Thank you very much. I'm fine, thanks.
So, 18 months old, you're taken away from your mother in England, and your family taken away because of your mother's alcoholism.
Yes. She'd been in the courts several times, and myself and my half brother were taken into care by foster parents, and my 5 half sisters had gone back to their original father.
Yeah.
And my mother had gone her separate way too.
Yeah. You have, obviously, at a year and a half, you have no sense of remembering her.
None.
But there's perhaps a deep imprint of the mother who carried you within you. It's in your very DNA, and maybe that's what propelled you to go and find out more.
Well, you know, there's always going to be a bond between children and their parents, and you know, I'm certain that there must have been that bond there at some stage. At some stage, I'm certain my mother must have loved me, you know.
Even at the stage you were taken away from her, she probably loved you.
Yeah. Even at the stage, because she did return to Ireland. I think it was approximately 1.5 years later to try to get myself and Lawrence, who was my half brother, to get us back to England. But she was unsuccessful, and I'm kind of glad about that too, because I was brought up by 2 magnificent grandparents, you know.
But it was, you know, the poor woman, she must have been a tortured soul.
Well, you know, of course she was. She lost all her kids. She had lost everything, really. And I know from my research, she had spent short periods of time in holding cells in the Grimsby area, where the police would have lifted her off the street. And I was actually speaking to a retired police sergeant about her, my mother, and he remembered her. And one thing that he remembers about her was that she would have cried in the middle of the night looking for her children. So it was turmoil for her.
Turmoil for her, a tortured soul, as we say.
Yeah.
And you went back to England to find out about the mother.
Yeah, well, the main source, I actually put an advert in the Scunthorpe Evening News, and I got a great response to it. I met my 5 sisters, half sisters through it. I met my half brother through that. And I met my uncle David, who was really the main source of information as regards my mother's life and her eventual demise at an early age.
How did that happen?
How did she die?
Yeah.
Well, she died alone in a derelict building on the waterfront in Grimsby. It was a disused grain store, and she had been living there for several weeks or possibly several months. And she died in degradation and squalor, really, you know, and alone.
This must, in many ways, completely break your heart.
Well, it does. You know, I understand. I crossed the line between social drinking and alcoholic drinking as well. You know, I understand the nature of addiction. I understand how she probably loved us, but just didn't have that inner strength to break on through and quit her drinking and whatnot. I don't know what issues had driven her initially to alcohol, but you know, the bottom line is, she was my mother. She did carry me for 9 months. She did get me into the world safe, and you know, living the way she was living, that was probably quite a feat at
Yeah.
the time, you know.
You've written the words,
Yes.
please. This is the story that Patrick wrote
This is a
about
short
his mother.
story entitled Some Son's Mother.
Away you go.
Some Son's Mother. Mona sat on a broken chair, at her feet a bottle of sherry and a pack of cigarettes. The sun fought its way through dust and broken panes to light up her swarthy face, not that glowing maid-like olive swarthy face, but a shade darker, put there by alcohol and the rough life. November is a cruel time for the fellowship of the fallen. The winter chill may come empty-handed, but leaves with a sack full of souls. Those park bench street sleepers, that chesty cough in July, could now become a deal closer. Her body is frail and confined to pain. She bends down and picks up the bottle. The culprit, the assassin, her lover and her killer. It's not going down the way it used to. She splutters and retches. Her system protests. And whilst her body wants to leave for Florida for a week, the mind and the soul, those often two key components for sustainable life, have been subjected to death by 1,000 cuts. From her second floor window of this disused grain store she calls home now, she can see clear across Grimsby Harbour. A tomb with a view. A chilly winter sun is dipping into the sea across the bay. The past comes back. The house on Astorby Road. She had been sober for a year, and the children were there with her. Life had taken an upward curve. No social workers, police holding cells or courts. Her dignity was returning. A mother starting to love and care again. Then over a period of weeks, the disease returns. Like a steam train coming. You see the steam and hear the clatter of the steel wheels before it comes round the bend to carry you away. You may know it's not a good idea to board because it's destination unknown, but you will clamber on nonetheless. Any addict will tell you when the war begins, although you don't know this at the time, you've usually lost. She understood the weight of the world, a great canyon of despair inside her, and rejection. She understood rejection. She had caused rejection and had rejection thrust upon her. Her children had been removed from her care and all doors closed. Family, friends and society. No one wants a drunk. Sad to look at, I know, but you wouldn't want to take one home with you. There wasn't even an ember of faith that could be cajoled into something like a fire. God was gone. Without hope, we just have hopelessness. It is written above the gates of hell, abandon hope, all ye who enter, and she had walked right in. Sunlight had turned to moonlight. A beautiful full orange moon sat in a sea of sequins. It put its finger through the window and illuminated the lady in the chair. But the lady in the chair didn't see it, although her eyes were open. In the turning of the day, she had slipped away. Her body was found 5 days later. And so it was that alcohol, like a thief with no honour, had robbed, beaten and murdered a young woman. Some may say that people do this to themselves. If it were that simple, who would wish such degradation and humiliation upon themselves? Who among us would wish to die alone in squalor? A deep-rooted character flaw, a disconnected spirit, a self-loathing of cataclysmic proportion, maybe all of these things. It's happening all around us as we speak. The final indignity was yet to come. On hearing of his sister's death, your brother, who for legal reasons shall remain nameless, had you quickly cremated, and your ashes, well, no one knows where they were thrown. I learned he did not want any publicity about you, his sister, and the condition of your demise, as it may have had a negative impact on his chances of being elected as head of town council. No resting place for those weary bones, no patch of grass for a rose, no stone marker dated to show the coming and the departure, no space between to show how you lived. So to you, Mona, my mother, I say, I'm sorry for you and the way your life closed. I'm sorry you lost hope in yourself and the world around you. I hope that where you have gone is a far sweeter place than where you were. Although I never knew you in this world, we may meet again in the new earth beyond this. I am your son. I made a promise that more than me would know of you and your story. Circumstances and people conspired to make you nameless. I have conspired against them. You are Mona Johns, and you are here.